a lot of the projects were designing the outside of hanky boxes, and I was like, oh, I don't want to be doing this. When I used to be a designer, I am now, I don't know what I am. Well, I'm in this other space. Whenever I worked for anybody, I earned them way more than I was ever paid. And I know that I did.
Yeah.
And I know my value. They broke me down. They broke me down so much. And they made me not like doing design anymore. I didn't think I was doing women justice being anonymous. I wanted people to know that it was my mind. I have no imposter syndrome. I worked fucking hard for years.
Right. So first of all, Morag, welcome to Plymouth. Did you enjoy your trip down?
I loved it. Lovely. And I love that bit of the sea when you pass by on the
Did you
train.
sit on the left-hand side? Good tip. I think that was yours, wasn't it? Absolutely. So we're going to just chat through a few questions.
Okay.
And the first one's around inspiration.
Okay.
Where did you get your inspiration from at the start of your design journey? What's put you on the trajectory that you're on then and maybe now?
So I lived in a very bohemian creative family in Holloway, and my dad was a classical musician, and I lived next door to my grandmother, to my grandparents, and my uncle, my only uncle, and he was also a musician. And then my mother was Scottish, and she was a textile artist. And my grandmother was a milliner for Hartnells as well. And actually recently somebody sent me a photograph of her in the workshops, and she was actually head hat designer. I didn't really know that. I just thought she was a milliner. You know, I didn't really know. So
what a great discovery.
So basically in our house, we just made and made. So from really teeny, and I'll talk about this at the start of my talk. You know, I made things, and I really loved embroidery and textiles. And I wanted to do my sitting guilds when I was like 11, because my mum used to teach it at Chelsea. And then I looked at the life of a textile artist, and at that time I didn't feel that that was what I wanted to do. My dad also wanted us to be really academic. So at school, you know, it was more being academic than doing art. But then when I was doing my A-levels, I just decided myself that I wanted to go to art school. So my mum had studied in Glasgow Art School. My dad had gone to the Royal Academy of Art. So mum and dad, even though creative, didn't really know London art schools or anything. So I just sort of, I think my art teacher said St. Martin's or something. And then I went to my head of the school head and told her I was giving up biology or something A-level, and she was like going, well, you're never going to make a living, and it's a total disaster the rest of your life. And I was like, well, my mum and dad feed us. I mean, we don't have a lot of money. We didn't have a lot of money, but, you know, I wasn't destitute. So I thought, well, you know, my parents are artists, you know, I think I can survive. You know, I think I can live making this decision. So so that's what I did. And then I applied to St. Martin's, and I got in on foundation at St. Martin's. And then my journey though through St. Martin's, and then I did degree at St. Martin's as well, and then the Royal College, wasn't very joyous. I found it really. I felt a bit of an outsider. I didn't really feel like I fitted in until I found one tutor in the third year, Jeff Fowle. Oh my God, he just suddenly opened my mind to who I could be.
It's funny how that happens, isn't it? Just takes one person. Yeah. One person. We hear that so many times because we do a lot of mentoring locally here, James and I, and other people that are part of Plymouth Design Forum. And you know, I recognise that we don't necessarily all have that kind of level of inspiration that that we're talking about here, but it's sort of like you hope that somewhere along their journey there'll be some kind of catalyst that will do exactly what you were just talking about.
Well, because I when did I go? Early 80s, I think. And, you know, a lot of our projects, I did graphic design. A lot of the projects were designing the outside of hanky boxes. And I was like, oh, fucking hell, I don't want to be doing this. I don't like this, and I had more of a brain, I wanted, and then but it was still like that. And then through the second year, I think they had a bit of a problem, didn't have enough tutors, whatever, anyway. And then I really thought I'd leave after the second year because I just didn't really feel it was for me. And then Jeff made me just go, Morag, you don't think of the subject you're working in. Just think up here. Just think right up here. You can always come to here. But if you start down there, you're never going to go up there. And he just made me think in a much rounder way that the work I was doing was about thought processes, about a bigger picture, a bigger social picture.
Right.
And then, whatever the thing was, it wasn't as sort of a decorative or just a form. And I know for different people different things are good for them, but for me, I had to have narratives in my work and bigger thought process. I always, when I was at the Royal College, I didn't want to do the cover of an opera. I wanted to make the sets. And I did.
Right.
And one of the most inspirational things I went to when I was at the Royal College, and I still to this day, it keeps on coming back to me, is when I went to see Hockney paints a stage in the Hayward Gallery. And I walked into that space. I never thought that actually I would be doing that then. Also because nobody encouraged me as well. When I did all my opera sets, they were just like, oh my God, she's never going to get a job. She's useless. And, and then I lost all confidence. But when I saw Hockney paints the stage and he took me on this magical journey within a, just like a stage set or something in a static place. I mean, none of the performances were there. It was just the pieces of work. And that blew my mind. And that, that was amazing. At that time in my life, I was this absolute sponge. I would go everywhere. I'd see every exhibition. I'd see every film. I would listen to every music. I would, and you just take on those, they just go into your body, don't they?
Yeah. So next question, we'll talk about fear.
Yeah.
So what scares you?
But everything scares me.
Tonight.
I have quite a lot of anxiety. So, yeah.
Because outwardly you wouldn't think.
No, people never think I have any anxiety.
I was quite anxious about, meeting you or actually meeting other speakers. I think it's like,
always
you have. But then always it's like, we've had a chat today and it's like, oh, wow. It's like, it's really relaxed and really nice. So I don't know. I'm hoping you feel less scared about tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. But then that's also worries me because then I worry if I'm not scared. So it's like a whole level of fear. I think, a lot of things scare me, and sometimes I think it overwhelms me, and I think, oh my God, why am I doing this? Why don't I just grow my tomatoes or something like that? And then because it's like this incredible adrenaline rush as well. So when you do it, it's like, wow, this is the most exciting thing ever. And so the fear, that it overrides fear. And it's like, well, I mean, I've never had any children, but I think that majority of my jobs is like having a child each time.
Yeah, right.
So, because it's like, there's so many sort of emotions you go through. Like this summer, I took on the mini project, and so I start off with no fear. So there's a massive project. They go, do you think you can do it? And you think, yeah, okay. And then you start doing it, and then that's when the fear kicks in. And then you just you either get it, you either do it, you can do it, and I haven't failed. I mean, yeah. So I haven't failed so far. Touch wood. So everything scares me. Absolutely everything. Yeah.
I think that's kind of...
That's quite interesting, though, not starting with fear, but then the fear creeping in. Is the fear creeping in a sort of symptom of, will people like it? Like.
Oh, I don't care about...
Is it will you like it? Are you happy with it? As a,
I don't care about. It's not that I don't care about where people liking things is a sort of complex thing. So, will the work have? For example, the one I'm doing at the moment in Ireland, I'm more worried because I'm working with lots of community groups. Will I give that group the right voice? I don't want to overpower that group with my own voice. Okay. Or how do we do? So a lot of it is sort of, wow, that's amazing. And then, okay, well, how do I navigate it? And during that navigation of the project is to think, well, what am I? Why am I doing it? And is this? Should I be doing it? So so then there's all this other sort of layering of stuff that becomes quite complex, and then once you then put pen to paper, which sometimes takes me quite a long time, but it's not instant. And it was the right moment to do it. Then suddenly all the stuff falls away, and I'm like, no, I've got it.
Yeah.
And then I can go forward. But for probably like 3 weeks, sometimes I mean, actually, with the mini project, I had this instant thing, and I just did it. But like when I'd finished last night, I've been like hot. I've been like, I just can't do the physical thing. And I'm like, well, why can't I do this thing? What's stopping me? What is this thing in front of me that's stopping me? And then, because when I actually start doing it, it's okay, but it has to be the right time. And I think the previous times maybe it isn't, but it becomes forced. And if I've ever done a project that's forced, it's bad.
Yeah, right.
And so I think in the past I used to just do as many projects as I possibly could or did, but I don't believe that now. I think now you should, because there's been some projects recently that come up that look interesting, but I just think, I don't know, I don't have a connection with that. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I would do that job justice.
Yeah.
And I think maybe somebody else would be better doing that job than me. And
I think it's a really good way of approaching any work. I think you probably agree with that as well. There's sometimes there are just jobs that just don't suit you, and actually having the wherewithal to actually say, look, it sounds like a great project, but it just isn't for me. And it's no disrespect to you as a client, as a business, as a brand, as a organisation, whatever. And it's quite hard to have that conversation though. Sometimes it's hard to people feel perhaps like kind of. They feel like, oh, I've been rejected.
No, there is. I mean, there is one at the moment that I went to see recently where I'm mulling over it, but I don't think it's quite right, and I know that I will upset that person.
But ultimately it's probably for the good, because as you say, you're going to be when you're forced to do something that. Not force, it's probably the wrong word, isn't it? It's not when you're forcing yourself rather than the other person forcing. It's actually when and then the ideas are harder to come by, or the work just doesn't flow as easily. And that's certainly true for my practice as well.
Yeah, same here, I think. I think it's harder for a younger designer, perhaps, who's establishing a career or a practice to say no to work. I think, especially if you need kind of that money. But certainly for us in our studio at the moment, I think we're, you kind of get a feeling, and it's just like, it's having the maturity, I think, now to come and say, do you know what, I just don't think this is going to work out. There isn't a chemistry.
You don't know when you're young. You don't know what. Quite often, you don't really know. I mean, maybe some people have a gut feel, but a lot of times, I think you don't actually quite know what's right and what's wrong, what fits with your personal values and vision for what you want to be as a designer yourself until you've actually got a few projects under your wing.
But I think that's also a bit to do with education and stuff. I think actually we should, when we're younger, be able to sort of navigate, again, that word, sorry, the spaces that we're in more than we do, because we feel I'm quite old, and as a woman growing up, particularly in within the graphic design environment, there are not many women. I mean, I had my own studio. There were no other women who had their own studio. And, you know, you are very, very alone in those, in that situation. And you were at that time dependent on males giving you, men giving you work as well. So then in the end, maybe I fitted in a little bit more than at certain points than I should have done, because I didn't want to rock the boat, whereas now, I think one of your questions, what you do, you're allowing yourself. I think I wish I'd been a bit more confident. But then I came from a family who had no money, and I watched them have no money, and I didn't want to be like that. So, I wanted money as well. So I think there's other things in life as well that is important. And it's not just about your work. It's actually about, I was an independent woman who wanted to be independent. I didn't want to ask a man to give me money to be able to go to the shops.
Yeah, for sure.
And I've always been completely independent. But then within that, then maybe you make different choices than just about your conceptual, cultural, whatever,
Yeah.
I mean, not cultural, that's the wrong, but you maybe do projects for money a little bit more than. But I've always been really, really absolutely from day one about brands, and I don't feel that I've ever done something for a brand that I don't feel, I wouldn't do things for Coca-Cola or Pepsi or anything like that, or certainly, quite a lot of things, and I'm glad I haven't. I don't have something in my background where that I've got to hide. Well, now somebody's going to look for it.
No, but I think I think it is important to sort of be able to draw a line under things that just don't meet your own personal values.
So I think integrity is really important throughout the whole thing. But I think also, though, don't beat yourself up if sometimes you do work that because you want to
live. Yeah.
Quite.
And there's been quite. I'm sure you've probably done work in at some point that at the end of the project, it's all gone well and everyone's happy. But you think it's not going on the website or in the portfolio, and you just put it in the drawer, and it's everyone's happy. The drawer of shame. Oh, that's a good way of describing it. But it's you move on from it, and you accept that it was done for a reason, and you've got mouths to feed if you've got a studio, and you've got to move forward with that. So.
But I think it's really good how things have changed, because when I used to be a designer, I am now. I don't know what I am. Well, I'm in this other space. But when I had my studio, nobody let you have your name on anything, because they didn't want you to have your name on it. They wanted whoever you're working for wanted to own that, whatever it is, and then they controlled you. And I think it's much better now that you should have your name on it, and then you should stand. So then you make the decisions for that more carefully, because also, your name is on that that piece of work, and I think that's a good thing. And I think everybody should. I did loads of stuff for the Design Museum for years and years, and they would, obviously the exhibitions, they'd have their names on it, but all the stuff we did, they never put our names on it. It's like, but it's design.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter which bit of design. You shouldn't make only the people in the exhibition. You should, this is the real work of design, and then, it should be celebrated as well. That was never celebrated in the same way as the other work, but it's actually the whole thing really that should be celebrated. I mean, GTF, you've got that picture. They were celebrated.
Yeah.
And, I mean, people knew I did stuff with Design Museum, but it's sort of not the same as the designer, the hero designers who we were showing in the thing.
Well, I think ultimately, it's a bit like anybody that works for us, like Tom or Sarah, who we meet later, Josh. The teams that are sort of, it's all done voluntary, but you've got to give them some respect and kudos for the time that they're dedicating to it, because actually, you know, they're all part of this creative team trying to make something good for Plymouth here, and you know that kudos comes from actually being name checked and being recognised.
Yeah, and when I do projects with communities and everything, I make a big thing that everybody's name is put on the work. And so with Hadrian's Wall, I'll show that today. You know, I wrote it on site, and there were over 120 people or something who were involved in that project. You know, and I think that's really important. Yes. It isn't just about this, you know, the individual or any, you know, it's actually this whole group of people, and it wouldn't happen otherwise.
Yeah, I think that's the same at PDF, isn't it? We can do it with just, you know, 1-2 of us. It's you know, really a collective, and you need these people to build this community, and you know, from that
and feel part of it.
That's quite important as well. I think, you know, and then they feel it's theirs. You know, if it was just something that, you know, Darren and I and Josh or whatever set up, I don't think people would really feel like it was theirs. They had any kind of ownership with it. But you know, this community's built on trust and friendships, and you know, sharing and championing each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
Based on what you were just saying just there, though, that and the journey you've been on from when you were, you know, young through to today, I get a sense that actually you would put yourself in a confident, creative sort of space as a person, rather than the idea of, you know, imposter syndrome, which we've heard that on a number of times with people who've come to speak.
I have no imposter syndrome.
Yeah, and
I worked fucking hard for years.
Right.
You know, I mean, I am, you know I'm good. You know, whenever I work for anybody, I mean, I'm older now. My memory isn't, you know, I'm not as good as I used to be. I will admit that. And I'll probably mix my words up in my talk today, but that's the trouble with being a woman and getting older. But when I was younger, I mean, I was so fast. I was a really fast designer. I really could get things straight away. And whenever I worked for anybody, I earned them way more than I was ever paid. And I know that I did.
Yeah.
And, you know, and I know my value, and I don't have any qualms about that you know, I worked hard to be where I am, and also, you know, to change. I changed. I also, it'll be 20 years ago now, probably, because I had Studio Myerscough, and then, but nobody knew, you know, I was a woman running my own company, but because that wasn't the norm at that time, nobody even knew that that Morag Myerscough was running Studio Myerscough. So I remember being at D&AD, and this guy said to me, who are you? And I said, oh, I'm Morag Myerscough. And he goes, oh, who do you work for then? And I said, Studio Myerscough. And he went, oh, Studio Myerscough, yeah, we know all about that. Yeah, their work's great. And I was like, yeah, that's me.
Hello.
And so then I went on this whole process of removing, you know, because even though Studio Myerscough was my name, what I realised is when I set my studio up at the time, being a freelancer was considered as not very cool. So if I set myself up as if there were lots of people working for me, so I set myself, and after living in Italy, they all called ateliers, I called myself Studio Myerscough. Immediately that sounds professional, doesn't it? So, but then it makes you anonymous. So what I realise now, and I see all the young people doing similar work to me, you know, is their name. They're using their name, and then Thomas Heatherwick is my contemporary, but obviously crazy successful. But he started himself as Thomas Heatherwick because he had the confidence to do that. And I realised at that time I didn't have that confidence. And so then after that point, I just thought, people need to know that I am doing this work, that it's Morag doing this work. So I changed it to Morag Myerscough, you know, and still people think I've got loads of people working for me, but and I, you know, I mean, this maybe 15 years ago now, I maybe had 1 or 2 assistants, but I don't have anybody now. But I work with I work with specialists who build things for me and things. So I'm not saying I do everything on my own, but I wanted to be. I didn't think I was doing women. I was doing women injustice by not being anonymous. I wanted people to know that it was my mind, my thought processes, and I really did. I wanted to be known as Morag Myerscough, and so that's when I changed. People still, because Studio Myerscough was very successful within architecture. You know, one of our buildings was up for the Sterling Prize, won the Sterling Prize. You know, within that context, I've been, I've done lots of work. People can't sometimes go beyond that, even though that's nearly 20 years ago. But for me, young people, the generations who see my work and the installation work, that is Morag Myerscough, and that is me. And it took me 25 years to get back when I was from my opposites at the Royal College to 2012, when I finally made my first structure. So that was, I left the Royal College in 1988. It took me till 2012 to actually be who I am within my, to really be Morag Myerscough.
So is that the advice you would give your graduating self?
Just to clarify, you're a confident creative, right?
100%. But I sense you are now. But I think one of the things you were saying there was that you weren't confident enough to use your own name at the beginning of this journey, and so is that the advice you would give to your younger self, or is it? Do you have to do these things? Do you have to go through this process to get to this point?
Well, I think you can fast forward it a lot more. So the world has changed, environments have changed. It's different for women than when I was graduated. So I think that there is a little film I was going to show of an interview I did about what I would have told myself. I would have liked to have more faith in belief in myself at that time, that not to be told by the people in power that I wasn't, I was just gonna never become anybody or anything or sort of thing. Because even though you do believe in yourself, you're young and you don't really, it's quite hard when people tell you that, oh my God, we've got to find a job for her and because she's never going to get anywhere. And then, whereas actually I think in a way the people in authority should have said to me, Morag, why don't you go and do opposites or something? Why don't you go and do another degree in set design or something like that? I don't know. It was just like, no, it was because particularly graphics is a very vocational. So it was like, no, you've got to go and get that. Yeah. But then saying that, the moment I did do what I was doing was the perfect moment. So if I'd actually done all the stuff 20 or 30, what would I be doing now? I don't really know. So maybe the world had to change and attitudes had to change for me to be able to express myself within this context in the way I am expressing myself. I don't know. Maybe my work wasn't relevant years ago, or maybe I was leading up to that point. I don't know, But because, that thing you said, you seem confident. So one of my old tutors, and I was somewhere and I said to him, I wish I'd been more confident when I was younger. And he goes, Morag, you were always really confident. so you see yourself.
One in the class.
I was always, I always got in trouble. So I think you can't see yourself,
Brilliant.
How do you rewrite? I think you just got to believe. I think the biggest thing is you do have to believe in yourself and who you are and never give up on that. Because I've had a very lonely journey. I've basically been on my own, doing my work on my own for and there have been some nice people around who have supported me, but I haven't had, when I was in London doing graphics, there was all, I know Cartledge, I know Ian Cartledge really well, he's really lovely, and but there's all the Maid Thought guys and all the Shawns, and I knew all those. Shawn was at Royal College with me, but they were all in their own gangs. They didn't like me, I was, because also women then in that situation was a different thing now. It wasn't equal. It was like, oh, I was a woman. And, it was a sort of different thing, rather than a work person, just a person who did the same work.
Did you ever come close to having a partner?
In the work?
In a work partner rather than a life partner. In as much, and you, slightly going off piste here, but it's like, personally, I feel like I have a partner who I work with, and I love that. I love that interaction of just being able to bounce ideas off that person constantly. And I think working on my own, I think I'd find that quite hard. I like being, even if it's a two-man team, I like being part of a team. But
I did have a studio with people eventually, but so originally,
somebody who was a contemporary who's on the same level as you, I guess, rather than perhaps.
Yeah. So when I went to the Royal College, then I went to Italy, and then I came back. So I couldn't speak Italian. They wanted me to stay, and I was going to be like a big designer in Swatch and stuff, and I didn't want to do that because I couldn't speak Italian, and I had blonde hair, really natural blonde hair, and it made that sort of became a funny thing, So actually, I wanted to come back to London and not be a sort of a thing. I wanted to be Morag with her opinions, And the boys who had left the Royal College, they'd all set up their own studios, and I thought, right. And I felt there was a glass ceiling also for women in Italy at the time, and I thought, right, I'm going to go back to London, and there's this girl, Jane Chitchase, who was below me at the Royal College, and I thought, I want to set up a studio, and I'm going to ask Jane if she's going to do that with me. And so Jane said yes, but we just set up in 91 or 2 when it was the worst recession of the whole of the time. But that was a good time to set up. We got a studio because I was obsessed with money. I used to work before that. Before I went to Italy, I used to work full time, and I used to do illustration overnight, and I'd save loads of money. So I had loads of money, so I could buy computers, I could set up a studio, and I'd got all this money. I said to Jane, "Would you do it?" So she was like, "Yeah." And we did. It was really nice. We managed to make a profit, God knows how, in a very difficult time. And it was really lovely. And that's when we first had our introduction to architects, because we were these two really, we were only in our 20s, and we were both blonde. And, within the architectural world, that was sort of an unusual sort of situation, 2 women running a studio. And but then there was a point where I wanted to buy more computers, and we had some money in the bank, and I wanted to buy some more computers. And I asked Jane, "We've got this money, I want to buy computers." And she said, "I want money to do my bathroom up."
Right.
And I was like, okay, I think we're going slightly different directions here.
Sure.
So then Jane. So we split up, and then Jane went and worked for Pentagram, and I then made the decision: would I set up on my own?
Yeah.
And then I did that, and then I've had Simon and Chris, who worked with me for over 10 years. I mean, I made them directors eventually, but then that didn't quite work, and then that was it. Then I decided I didn't want a studio. So there was this beautiful moment where we had this studio, and it was just such fun, and it was a real family, and it was really lovely, and it was really brilliant time. But I knew once I was that much different age, I knew I could never replicate that situation. And then I did get people working for me, which was quite nice, but they listened to show tunes, and I don't like show tunes. And and then the gap seemed bigger, and I'd lost that, I couldn't replicate that again, and then I felt that I didn't want to do that again. I didn't want to try and do it again.
And I guess by that time, like you're so comfortable in your own skin as well that you don't probably feel the need at that point to have extra baggage of other people. And
no, I mean, I loved having a studio, but I felt that there was, there's a responsibility that comes with that, which then also means you maybe have to do some work that you might not want to do. So I had been frustrated for quite a long time, and then I did all this stuff at Designer's Block and stuff, and we made products. So then Luke, who is my partner now, I met him, and then I had this old boyfriend who was an architect, and then we all did all these products and stuff, and we sort of started from scratch again. And then I really liked the idea of self-initiating things. And at that time, if you were a designer, it was very rare to self-initiate work, but you knew that to be considered to your thought process, you needed to self-initiate work. And so then I had a shop in my house. So I lived in, I had a shop called Her House in my house, and I made products. And, so I started all this whole thing that I'd basically been waiting for 15 years to do, So, and then it led on. And then eventually, I moved from that house, and I moved down to Drysdale Street, and then I had a couple of assistants there who were quite, they're really nice, and then I just didn't want that anymore, and because I think the work I do has to come from me. It's not, when I work with community groups, that's different because I'm the orchestrator of that, so the work comes from them. But when there's certain things that come from me, it has to come from me. And I want to do that, I want to get that out, sort of thing.
So what do you think the biggest challenge is that creatives will face in the future? The world is a very different place. It feels like everything feels like it's on fast forward to me now. I
think we're at a point now that all these things are just, if we understand them, they're just another tool. And if we want to use them, I'd like to do more digital work. Originally Mini was going to be a digital piece, and actually it became a physical piece. And then I was like, have I made a mistake not doing a digital piece? But then I felt, well, often things related to cars are often, it's whizzy and digitally and everything. So actually it was quite nice making a physical piece. I think it's about the environment. I think it's about why should we make things? Why are we making things? And if we do make these things, what is our responsibility towards that making? And I think that, when people talk about how, designers have shaped the world, in a bad way, because they've made people want to consume things in a much more massive way than maybe they necessarily, need to. And I think it's now time for us to, rectify them, pay penance, actually change people's way. If we've made them buy, we've got to make them not buy. Not that I want the world to fall apart, the commerce to fall apart or anything, but I think there's other ways of doing things, which, I've grown tomatoes for a long time, but when I was young, I don't think I thought, I'd like to go out and grow tomatoes. I don't think that was as a young person. I had a few house plants, but I didn't really think. Whereas if we can get people to think, just like we should all grow our own veg or something, but because everything is a backlash, in the war, everybody had to grow. And so then when you don't have to grow, you're like, I want convenience. And then we sort of grew up in the more convenience last, 40 years or whatever. And now it's actually, no, how do we change these things, and how do we think about the long-term future rather than the short-term? And so I think it's about responsibility to people and also to the environment. It's very difficult, to do that. And when I do projects now, I build in that from the very beginning. I ask them, what are you going to do with this? Because if you're not going to do something with it, I don't want to do the project. If it's going to be up for 3 days and thrown in a bin, it's not right anymore.
Yeah, it has to have some longevity and some permanence about it.
Yeah. So, and then also our choice of materials. Where people are still, recycling isn't as good as everybody makes out it is. I don't really believe it is. So therefore, instead of depending on recycling, which then you're bringing raw material and then recycle, actually let's try and work out what are the materials that are good and then work with those, and then then work with the there's so and culturally I think it's so much better now, and I think everything is much more questioning. I worry about this complexity about the truth, where what is the truth, and everything is your own truth, and something is the truth. I think that is a very complex sort of thing. But maybe in the past we didn't question the truth enough. We didn't question enough.
Yeah.
But then maybe at the moment there's a little bit gone the other way, where everything is over questioning or over analyze. I mean, there's so much analysis of absolutely everything that happens. You're like, maybe that person just did that thing by accident. Not a bad thing. I mean, when it's a bad thing, that's really bad. But if it's like not even a heart, but it's still made to be over. They were talking this morning about, which is, no, it's just left my head. The comedy, the satirical American comedy that's on all the time that everybody watches. Anyway, they were talking about Harry, that they were taking the piss out of how much money Harry and Meghan made and stuff like that. And people were saying, this is unfair to them. And you're like, maybe it's a bit harsh, but it's all right.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I think the question of truth is a tough one. I think it's probably a tough one for creatives as well. If you think about it in the context of what we were talking about with regards to the environment, sustainability, you could very well be told a truth by a client on a project, and actually you subsequently find out that actually that was their truth on a specific, and their view on a specific topic, and actually. That's, once you dug a little bit deeper or scratched the surface of it, you found something different. Yeah. And that could probably be quite a challenge. Going, well, actually, I didn't realise that was the case. But on the other side of it, I think that I watched a podcast the other day between Mark Zuckerberg and this guy, and they were both operating this podcast in the metaverse. So they scanned themselves. And they were then and they were both in different locations. I think one was in Texas and one was in California, and they were talking as if they were in this room. But the scan was so real. It wasn't like a sort of caricature or something. It was a real person. They were sitting there in a sort of black sort of space, just talking to each other. And the podcast guy was saying, I'm having trouble concentrating because this feels so real. This feels as real as if I'm sitting in a room with you. Well, if you then sort of apply those ideas to the idea of consumption or waste of materials when you create something physical, well, actually, you can maybe have those experiences, but create them in an artificial world, a digital world, still have those experiences, those physical experiences, but then when everyone's finished, you just turn it off and everyone goes home, and nothing has been wasted. I don't know what that does to the idea of human interaction and to our species needing this kind of physical.
Yeah, I think there's a place for all those things, really, for one and the other thing, But I think. Because I think what we got to remember, unless I'm sure they probably are doing that, but smell is quite a big thing as well.
Yes, yeah.
And also judging people in a space. I remember working with a team of people throughout lockdown, and I'd visualise, I'd seen them all on Teams or whatever. And then I met them all in the room, and they were completely different. I didn't recognise any of them. They were like different heights. And
the same happened to me. I was actually on a call with someone, and there was this really quite an impressive, strong woman, and she was, I was like really impressed by her big voice, and she was just so kind of direct. And I was like, wow, she was really impressive. And then we were at some kind of exhibition recently, and I was like, I felt that this person looking at me, and I kind of I thought, I don't know them. And then just, hi James, and I was oh my god, it's you. And she was so tiny, but on Zoom she was this like huge kind of like, and this just the way that she spoke, it's really, really funny.
Yeah, and so then do you have then if you do it in that space, even though it feels real, do you forget it like you're watching a TV program? Do you remember their face?
Yeah.
Is there the same memory, or is it a two-dimensional memory that's not a full memory of that person? Because, and I think there's that human, back to talking about Thomas Heatherwick's book, actually, humanizing thing. I think there's that human thing that I think we've got to be careful that, especially with all the mental health, because for people like us, we can we've had one and we've had another, so we can sort of navigate. We can sort of work out how to is this something we enjoy or not enjoy or whatever. But if you're a young person and you don't know any different, and then that is the only thing you're exposed to, then is that right? Should we live in this virtual, non-physically connected?
I definitely think talking about, for example, Plymouth Design Forum, getting a person down, yourself, to come down, and people like can totally relate to a person and understand. If we were to do exactly the same on Zoom and you're on a big call, or as a digital thing, it would be a completely different experience.
100%.
And I think seeing that person and how they interact, and seeing them as a person. We spoke. Otherwise, you could just be like this piece of artwork or this that you're known for. But you can see them as a person. I think that's really, really interesting. And certainly for students, they can kind of think, yeah, okay, yeah, I get that. Yeah, okay, that's a person. I could be like that. Or, there's that kind of personal connection, which I think is really important for certainly our community. I think you'll see it tonight.
But it will get more and more sophisticated, and to a point, like you're saying, to a point where even though, because it's actually quite crude how we're doing it at the moment, relatively, even though that one you said isn't, and therefore, maybe. It will take over. I don't know.
It's the cycle of technological evolution will only increase, and if you think, go back 20 years, no one did video calls. Now everyone does video calls, and then this idea of going from sort of being able to sort of meet physically versus meet virtually and all of that stuff, it will increase, but
I think the reason nobody did video, because I've been doing Skype, which was sadly they didn't get on the bandwagon, didn't they? Anyway, I did projects around the world for a long time, and in America, and we used to do Skype, which wasn't brilliant, but it did work because we'd already physically met.
Yeah.
So we'd already gone. So when we were on it, we all knew each other's nuances because we'd been out to the bars and we'd sort of done things, and absolutely, but like next week I'm going to America because I've done Zooms like for the last year and a half with these people, but really they know and I know that until I actually go there, it's a sort of different thing. So I have done projects where it's completely via Zoom, but then you're very dependent on the people who are feeding you the information as well, and then there is always a bit of a level of detachment. But I think it's a balance. I think that I used to hate. I wouldn't have moved if Skype or if Zoom or Teams hadn't come along, because people were ridiculous. They used to make you go to stupid meetings and you'd sit there. I was even called back for one project from America to go to a project, to a meeting, and I told them I didn't know to go, but they were so like in control that they made me come. And then I then had to fly back to America because I was going to go and do a talk in Australia. And it's just like, well, what I would say to them now is, you don't ask me because that's not sustainable. I mean, to make me get a flight for a 2-hour meeting, I had a project manager. So it wasn't, I wasn't essential on the job. It was a really big job. The reason I had a project manager is so that they could tell me. Anyway, so that, I'll never forget that, and I will never do it again. And I realised then how, and this was 12 years ago, and I realised then how stupid I was, and I should have said, I'm not coming back, you know, and...
so that doesn't get on your list of favourite projects?
That particular project, no, I'm not going to say what it is.
So what is your favourite? Top of the pile, the thing that you're most proud of?
Changes all the time.
Does it?
Because everything evolves from one, because when I was a designer, everybody wanted me not to do the thing that I did before. And if I did anything like I did before, then they would go, well, that's like you know, use that same font for somebody else. Because there's, you know, I like that font and you're in a different business, you know, whatever, you know. And it was, but what is so brilliant about the work I do now is it learns, it advances from the previous work and advances from the previous work, and so there's elements that reoccur and then which feel very close to me, and then there's other things that are totally new and which are responsive to the people, the space, you know, different things. So Hadrian's Wall to Hadrian's Wall, you know, and the relationship that I had as a child with Hadrian's Wall, and then the local people. So you know, I would say just being able to have started doing this work and all the projects I've done since are the things I'm most proud of. To be, you know, from 2012 when I did the Movement Cafe, where I originally, and then Temple of Agape was really, well, every single one of these installations have a relationship. What I tend to do is I am showing a lot of projects actually, probably too many, and which can skip through. But actually, I tend to show the most up-to-date, because it's always ever evolving and ever growing from the other one and stuff like that. So so I don't have.
I think work that informs your next project and the next project and the next project, that's again, I think, also a natural journey for a creative person is that, you know, even though you'll create something new and exciting for the next project, and it will be unique, but it will inevitably be informed by what has gone before, right?
Yeah, but then external forces can try and tell you not to do that as well, so that I don't have that issue anymore. That is, you know, and people want, you know, when somebody says to me, can you do it in like greys or something, I'm saying, well, don't come to me then, you know. I mean, I don't do greys, you know. I didn't used to do purple, but actually I'm converted purple. I wasn't told to do purple, but I've grown my purple.
You touched on Heatherwick a couple of times because you just finished his book. Is there anything out of his locker that you would go, you know what, I'd love to have had a crack at that?
Well, I mean, he's done a lot of big projects. I don't necessarily feel that I don't have envy for other people's projects particularly, really at all. I mean, I think the High Line in New York was amazing, you know, like a massive big change, you know, doing that was such an amazing regeneration change and stuff like that. Maybe when I was younger, I would have been envious of things or something, or wish I'd done certain things, maybe a little bit. But I don't now. You know, I've got more than enough that I don't want to take, you know, I don't, you know, the idea, well, I did do a really big project that I thought was going to be the big sort of like biggest thing, and actually I hated it and I didn't enjoy it, and I don't really like, I don't like the politics sometimes of it's maybe copping out a bit, but I think life's too short. So I don't like doing really long projects that have a lot of politics involved in it. And then the outcome, it gets back and forth and thrown around, and I don't like that. I really do believe in the true, pure thought at the beginning. And if that is a sketch, if that sketch is retained to the very end, that was the right thing. I don't believe in millions of iterations where actually you lose. Some people, that works for them, but for me, what I'm doing, I think there's a pure thought that comes from where I don't know where it comes from, and then if that's then fed all this stuff into it that then is confuses it all and stuff like that, then I would probably pull out of a project like that. If I can see that there's somebody or anybody who's not wanting to go on that journey with me, I won't do it anymore. If they've got their own agenda, that's don't use me.
I think it's a brilliant focus to have. It's hard.
Yeah, because
it's a hard process.
Because the project that I worked on, where they literally broke me. It was 11 years ago. It's the same one that made me go back in the plane. They broke me down. They broke me down so much that I didn't know whether what I was thinking was right or wrong or whatever. And they made me not like doing design anymore because they took any control. It's not about control, but they took any of I didn't know how to make a decision for them. I didn't know how. And at the same time, while I was doing this project, I was also doing my installations. And then within that space, those people were really loving those. And within this space, everything I said didn't have enough this, didn't have enough that, didn't do this, didn't do that, blah, blah, blah. And it really broke me. And I can't believe how much it broke me, actually, so then I rejected that. I tried one more time doing a big design project. And then that was it. I was like, I don't want to go. I don't want those feelings. I don't want that feeling of trying to make me feel so, I don't know what it was. It was, I don't know. Anyway, it was bad. And so...
conform to somebody else's ideas, I guess, is ultimately.
But they didn't have ideas. They were just like, no, we don't like this. We don't know what we want. We don't want. So it'd be it was just this sort of like endless for years and years. Honestly, I could have done 3 postgraduates. It was just this to a point where you were swimming in this mire that you could never get out of, and at the end of it, they go, well, do you like it? And it's like, I don't fucking know. Quite frankly, it's so beyond where I was at the beginning that it's not about whether, and then so that's where working, you've got to be careful about, people have got to be careful about how you begin a process. So if a process at the beginning is completely collaborative and people are feeding in a positive way, that is brilliant. And I do a lot of projects like that, and I work collaboratively. It's not, the projects I do is not all about me. But this one was a very different process where they just kept on showing me, we don't like this, give me something. We don't like that, give me something. We don't like this, no, why? And why? Oh, we don't know why, but we know we don't like it. And it's just like, well, okay, because maybe if you'd actually thought about the one in the first place, it would have been okay. But anyway, and this went on for a very long time, and that actually grinds you down. So I fell out of love really with the thing that I'd loved for a really long time. But then it made me focus on, really realised, really giving me the confidence that actually what I do within the context, you know, is the right thing, is right for me, and it's this other space.
Yeah.
So it's I mean, I call myself an artist now because that's a lot of the work I do. I also call myself a designer. So I sit in this space that I made in a way for myself, and there's lots of other people in that space as well now. But you know, and I think that's good. And I don't want to fit in. I don't want to. I've never been really part of anything. So, and I've accepted that. You know, when I was younger, I used to feel, why am I not part of things? But actually, I realised that actually, because I wasn't, you know, I didn't quite fit in, and now I just forward to the things that I want to do. You know, or
maybe by not fitting in is actually made you fit in, if you know what I mean. It feels like it's sort of you're an outlier to that world of creativity, and actually now that world
has changed
and it embraces the idea of the outlier. And
exactly. I mean, it took a long time.
Yeah. Well.
But I've always felt like, you know, like you can hear now, that, you know, I have quite a lot to say, and I think in the past I was sort of either not confident enough or felt like nobody wanted to know what I wanted to say, you know, and so now I feel that you know, because when you're designing, you're doing it for other people, you're taking on their things, and I always thought it was like being a method actor. So I was very good at it. I would take on people's business, you know, and I would make them whatever that what they wanted to be, and take on all their you know, find out the best way of doing it. But now I'm not a method actor, you know, I am myself, and that's, I prefer, I like that.
Final question.
Okay, another question. Okay.
This is it. This is
okay.
the last one. I think you know what's coming anyway, because this is from your...
Oh God.
This is from Marina Willer, who was our previous guest of Pentagram. And yeah, so if Morag had to create a project for people on an island where everyone is colourblind, how would she approach it?
I'd leave them to it, I think.
Leave them to it.
I mean, I did have a talk with a guy who's there's this cyber guy, and, you know, and he just sees all the world in grey and stuff like that. I don't know, I worked, one guy came to work with me, and it was all colours, and we had 30 colours. He was colourblind, and so we numbered everything. So
do colourblind people see colour?
Well, there's different forms of colour. So he was completely grey, white or something, but, you know, and it's mainly men as well, so it must have been mainly men on this island. It's green, red, you know, so what I understand is you see a sort of murky colour. So you might look at my jumper, you might see some colours, but you won't see the colour in the way that we see the colour. But right. Isn't it that we don't see colour anyway? That it doesn't exist anyway? Oh, I don't know. It was so complex. When I was talking to the cyber, it was just like way beyond me. I was just like, oh my God, because he had a thing that he did paintings. That he had this. When he came across the vibration, and then he would do a colour, but he couldn't see the colours and stuff. But I don't know, what do you think is the thought? Why has she asked me this question?
I'd imagine it's because you're very colourful and big personality, so she's perhaps kind of taking that away from you and thinking, how would you go about it?
But I don't have to do anything for anybody, so you had to create. Well, it depends. Yeah. Do those people want me?
I can't.
You know?
But if they did, well, if the people from that island said, we're all colourblind, help us, Morag, that would be quite an interesting brief though, right? Help us understand colour for people who are colourblind?
Well, so this guy had vibrations. So, I mean, there are things where I did colour tweets for 2 years, and then I did an artwork that was for my colour tweets that was about mood. And so in the morning, I would get up in the morning and I'd write whatever colour that I felt that mood gave, the mood I had. Right. And then when I've been doing these workshops recently, I've been asking people about what colour they like and what colour they think, and interestingly, pink is a very probably this type of pink is up on the high level of happy colour. Right. It's a happy colour. Yes. So I think that if people were colourblind. If they wanted to sense colour, then you would use other parts of your senses to sense that colour. Yeah. So you would do it by vibration. So pink would be a heightened vibration and black would be a dull vibration. So I think you would do it through your other senses. It could be poignantly through smell, through things. So if it was about the world that you were visually looking at, didn't give you the impact that colour gives you, then it's all the other senses you would use to heighten that impact sort of thing, I think. Because you can't change their sight, can you? So, and be
an interesting physical, even texture, I guess.
Texture, heat, and red could be like burn your fingers, couldn't it?
Yeah.
But then, I mean, are they visualising colour? Do people need to visualise colour? I don't know how important colour is to anybody. Some people hate it. Most people hate it. Most people don't even want colour in. I mean, most people would be in this room that you've got here as if they were colourblind. That's what most people would be in.
Yeah.
Because they think that's soothing to be in grey continually. Surrounded by. So I don't know, Marina, if I answered your question, but maybe you might be better at answering the question than me.
Well, I think that's it. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
For coming all the way down to Plymouth.
It's not that distance.
It's a long way. Believe me, I've done that train trip quite a few times. And everyone's really excited about seeing you tonight. And yeah.
God, I hope I'm not talked out. That's the trouble.
Oh no, that'd be a disaster. I doubt it.
That would be, you doubt it.
A few hours, but I don't think so.
It's because I'm stuck out in the countryside. I don't talk to anybody. So now I got you and I'm talking to you. Anyway. Thank you. Well, thank you. I hope I didn't say too many bad things.